As our world changes, we'll keep you up to date with the latest information. News Talk KVNU 102 FM 610 AM.
KVNU News Time is 5:05. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by Roof Rescue. Paramedics and law enforcement were called to Dutro Company after an employee reportedly got their arm stuck in a machine. The industrial accident occurred Wednesday morning, this morning around 9:30 a.m. According to emergency radio traffic, the employee's arm became stuck in a press brake used for bending metal. A Logan City police officer was the first to arrive on scene. A tourniquet was applied onto the injured employee's arm until paramedics made it to the incident. Logan City Fire Marshal Craig Humphrey said the woman had significant injuries to her forearm. She was transported by ambulance to Logan Regional Hospital in stable condition. KVNU News Time is 5:06. KVNU weather for tonight. Cloudy, snow likely this evening. A chance of snow after midnight and colder temperatures, about an inch accumulation tonight. Low temperature in the lower 20s. Partly sunny and cold tomorrow, lower 30s. And then Friday, Veterans Day, partly cloudy in the morning, then mostly sunny, but still on the cool side, around 30 degrees. Earlier today, we reached 43. Right now, it's 31 at KVNU. KVNU weather is brought to you by Top Job Asphalt. They specialize in asphalt paving and maintenance, as well as concrete installation and repair.
This is Mark with Roof Rescue. Most of us don't think about our roofs very often until you see shingles on the ground or water drips through your ceiling. Keep your roof in tip-top shape to protect your home, your biggest investment. Roof Rescue uses only the highest quality materials with experienced workmanship guaranteed to last. Even if you were denied by your insurance company the first time, a free re-evaluation can be made. Visit roofrescueusa.com to schedule your free consultation in Cache Valley and surrounding areas. Roof Rescue, providing watertight peace of mind.
KVNU News Time is 5:07. After all the sound and fury between the county executive and members of the Cache County Council, Executive David Zook retained his post by a comfortable margin during Tuesday's midterm election balloting. A total of 13,738 county voters expressed their support of Zook, while only 7,119 voted for a change in the form of write-in candidate Mark Ensign. That outcome can only be seen as a stunning rebuke to the members of the county council, some of whom were openly supporting Ensign. Zook said he spent Tuesday night writing thank you notes to all of his friends and supporters who have helped him through the campaign.
I've told so many people that when you go through something tough, that's when you find out who your friends really are. And what I have really learned during this process, I've had so many great friends who've been such a support to me, and it's been wonderful.
It remains to be seen, however, whether the newly elected county executive can make peace with the council's current and future members. During a previous radio interview on KVNU, Council Vice Chair Paul Borup said that the council's members would be more comfortable with a county executive who is more in sync with their vision of his role. And last night, Proposition 1, the Open Space Bond Initiative, passed. 14,424 votes for it, 12,246 votes against. The RAPS tax won more handily. Last night, Proposition 2, extending the Recreation, Arts, Parks, and Zoo tax, 18,273 for that, and 8,433 against it. You can get all the election results at CacheValleyDaily.com. KVNU News Time is 5:09. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
As our world changes, we'll keep you up to date. News Talk KVNU 102 FM 610 AM. Also on the new KVNU mobile app.
When it comes to home care, it's important to know you have a choice. If you or a loved one is in need of hospice or home health services, remember that Primrose Home Care and Hospice believes believes in treating the patient, not the problem. We work directly with you and your doctor to create a health plan that's catered to your needs. Our team is devoted to providing options in the freedom and safety of your own home. Visit us at primrosecare.com or call to schedule a free consultation. Primrose Home Care and Hospice, your local hospice and home health provider since 2006.
The Elements Restaurant is serving a plated Thanksgiving dinner this year with all the holiday classics. Herb roasted turkey with a sage turkey gravy, garlic whipped potatoes and whipped sweet potatoes, traditional cornbread stuffing, and delicious warm rolls. And for dessert, choose between pumpkin pie, pecan pie, or apple galette. Let the Elements serve your family a delicious Thanksgiving feast while you spend the day enjoying family and friends. Prime times fill up quickly. Reserve online today at theelementsrestaurant.com or call 750-5171.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Hour 2 of today's show, Wednesday, November 9th, the day after the midterm elections. We talked about the results nationwide, here in Cache County, statewide, and more in Hour 1. Now we have a chance to talk about the elections from a very different perspective. And different perspective, I think, is what has captured my interest in this ongoing pilot program here in Utah. It's called the Dignity Index. And it's running as an 8-week pilot program here in Utah before expanding nationally. And the idea behind this is simply bringing some dignity back into our conversations, our interactions, whether that be all of us online or our elected officials during policy debates or during campaigns, town halls, and election debates. We could all do with a little more focus on making sure we're conducting ourselves with dignity. The Dignity Index is into its, I believe, 4th week at this point here in Utah. And with an update post-election, we have our friend Tami Pyfer joining us. Tami, a former city council member here in Logan, a school board representative for the northern part of Utah for quite some time, an education advisor to former Governor Gary Herbert, now with Project Unity's Dignity Index. And Tami, appreciate you taking some time for KVNU on a weekly basis to talk about this. Did I get that right? Are we in week 4 of the pilot?
I think we're actually, this is week 6. We released week 5 towards last week, so we're finishing up week 6 here and
that's right.
Wrapping it up. I'm
sorry, yeah. I forgot. I know
time flies. Right?
The election has my brain just jello. I'm really this has been so fun to talk about because it's so different from what I would worry sometimes when you'd hear calls for civility or people to that word civility even sometimes. Mm-hmm. I would worry sometimes that people didn't really understand what it meant. What does being civil even mean? And I worried that it sort of became white noise, that it wasn't something people paid attention to. We all know what dignity means, and we all know what it means to conduct ourselves in an undignified manner. I love that. I love that that's the approach that you all have taken.
Well, I think I've told you this before, but we've based a lot of our work on Arthur Brooks' research and his book, Love Your Enemies. And he talks about civility being a really low bar. He said if you were to say, I'm civil with my wife, I'm civil with my family,
sure,
it immediately conjures this picture of, like, that's it, you're civil.
You're civil.
And it kind of has, it's like, so he talks about that being a low bar and leading into his point that we should love our enemies. And we've thought a lot about the words that we use. Is it dignity? Is it civility? Another word that has come up quite often is respect, which I think is higher than civility. And yet dignity carries its own nuance and its own meaning that a friend of mine was telling me last week, that it even gets into maybe some of the religious texts or different spiritual guides throughout the centuries talk about dignity just a little bit different.
Sure. That's what I like about dignity as well, is that You can argue with dignity. You can get angry with dignity.
Right.
It doesn't mean everyone's just sitting around smiling and nodding at each other, which I don't think really anyone wants to see, especially in our public policy debates. Sometimes you want to see different ideas battling it out, but you can do that with dignity. I hesitate to even ask, Tammy, but so the midterms have just taken place. What did you see as you guys have ranked candidates and debates and even looking at kind of the national stage? I know, there's a lot of concern right now about some very serious things like political violence and how our speech kind of contributes to that. How did we do as a country, as a state?
I don't think you want my off-the-cuff answer.
That's why I was afraid to ask.
Let me just give you a couple points. First of all, I think, especially here in the state, we're really glad to have this over, the election over, and we've had a lot of outside money come into the state and pay for millions and millions of dollars worth of ads that I really feel aren't representative of the type of dialogue that we have in Utah. I think it pushed a lot of issues over the edge when it comes to contempt. So I think all of us are glad that it's over. There's been a couple of reports out recently from, I think ABC News last week did a poll that said 9 out of 10 Americans are concerned about the increased risk of violence because of the political speech and the contempt that is growing in our culture. And so people are tuned into that and worried about that. Now, as far as the speeches, in Utah last night or nationally, we've started gathering what we can find from the Utah candidates, either online or, televised speeches or things that they put on their social media. We have not started to score those yet. But I think what you'll see, my prediction, is that you see the campaign speech being, people feel like it has to be contemptuous. And to your point, we disagree. We think you can have dignified, passionate, debates where you disagree. But people, I think, in general think, I have to be contemptuous in a campaign.
Sure.
But what we hope that they understand is once you're in office, I just don't think there's an excuse that you need to move up on the scale, because the 5, 6, 7s are where you reach across the aisle. You work with people different from you. You listen to all sides. And now that you're not in campaign mode anymore, again, I don't think there's an excuse to not move into the levels of dignity where you have to work with people and you represent everyone, not just the people that voted for you. And so you need to start seeing all of those different perspectives. So I hope that we see that change, not just in our Utah politicians, but nationally as well. I hope people start to understand that they gotta have a different dialogue in order to solve problems. And just one more thing, I know I'm talking way too much, but
no, I love it.
About the index. We talked about the index as a problem-solving tool. We've said that it can ease divisions, it can prevent violence, and it can solve problems. So if we look at the problem-solving that needs to happen in Washington, D.C. right now, we think that the index is a great roadmap for elected officials to say, I know we need to solve problems. What can I do? Well, you can start looking at people differently and using language that is inclusive, that doesn't say it's me against you. It's, I win, you lose, but you start to solve problems in a higher level, higher language.
Sure. This is, for listeners, if you want to understand this, of course, visit the website, dignityindex.us, and read it yourself. But just to give you an idea, level 1, the lowest level of dignity is somewhere around, violent language escalating to violent actions or dehumanizing people you disagree with. They're not even human. We must destroy them because of that. And then the highest level of dignity is, I don't hate anybody. Everyone deserves being treated with dignity, and then there are 5 options in between the two, 6 options in between the two, where most of us probably vacillate in our average day. Sometimes we're not proud of ourselves for doing so. Sometimes we're very proud for how we've handled the situation, and we're all human. But Tami, what fascinates me about this is, so you working as an advisor to Governor Herbert, I know you worked a lot with the legislature, and from personal experience, And of course, being here on the radio every day, I always think about this from how does this translate down to the average listener or news reader or news viewer if it's television news? And in the media, we have a tendency to talk about the battles and the back and forth, the war of ideas. That's a common phrase, which implies violence. And then I go down to the legislature, first time ever. This was 15 years ago. I work with a handful of lawmakers on a piece of legislation, and to my surprise, I find out that very liberal state senators like Luz Escamilla are good friends with very conservative state senators like Kurt Bramble. They're buddies. Yeah. They actually get along and like each other. They don't agree on anything, and that was the first time I realized that the media plays a part in this too. How it gets translated, right?
The media plays a huge role in this, and the language. I'm going to have to agree with you on legislative sessions, and I have found myself falling into this trap too. But the language is, we're going to gear up for the battle this year. The battle for public education, and we're up for a fight this time. And we use that language of war and battle, and I'm going to hold my own, and we've got to make them see it our way. And it's such a natural tendency for us to fall into that language, black and white. And to move past that, we all have to have the same experiences that you've had and that I've had to some degree, which is, I really like that. I really like that legislator. Sure. I don't agree on things with that. In fact, there's one, one of my favorites, and I now label him as my frenemy because we disagree, but we're friends. I mean, it's kind of the classic use of frenemy, really.
Sure.
And to do that, you are able then to have these really robust discussions and disagree and argue even on policy, knowing that in the end, I don't hate you, and I want to learn from our differences. And when you go back to that scale again on dignityindex.us, when you look at, I think it's between a 6 and a 7. One of them is, I want to see where we agree so that I can work on things that we both agree on. But the next level up is, I really want to find out where we disagree. That's what really ignites my imagination, is where we disagree. And that's where I want to engage you with. And it's like, if you ask the average person, hey, I want to work with you because we disagree on so much stuff, you go, absolutely not. That's
sure.
not what I want to talk about. But when you start to get into the mindset of dignity and the language of dignity, you will find yourself drawn, almost attracted to people who think differently, because it's like, man, I want to know what experiences you had that led you to this opinion that is so different from mine. I want to learn from you. And that's where you work. Imagine the problem solving that could take place in city councils, in the state legislature, and especially in Congress, if that were our mindset.
Sure.
Is I want to learn from what we disagree on. Get me there so we can talk about it.
And it is, it's something I don't do it as much as I'd like to, or as I probably should, especially, being here on the radio every day. But I have a lot of personal experiences where that has happened to my surprise. And I've mentioned this before, I think, when we've been talking, Tami, but Paul Miro and I are actually very close friends.
Right.
He and I
remember those days.
We are not the same on a single, well, okay, we were pretty close on immigration and some other things, but mostly Paul and I had a lot to argue about. But one thing I learned through that friendship was why Paul thinks the way he does as a conservative, right, as someone who once headed up the most conservative think tank in the United States, the Sutherland Institute. Mm-hmm. I learned why he thinks what he does, and it was impossible to dislike him at that point. I still thought he was wrong about everything, but it was impossible to dislike him. And suddenly we started having these productive conversations, and then that turned into a regular thing here on the show that listeners loved. And that's literally what you're talking about here, right? With this dignity index and having a better understanding, you're talking about making that transition from screaming at each other in a non-productive way, or even political violence or violent rhetoric, to productive conversations that could actually get everyone solve a problem or two, right?
Yeah, we're talking about the Miro moments. I do remember that. I do remember how different your personalities were.
I
honestly.
Still miss them.
Yeah, and we're also talking about another good example is the Orrin Hatch Ted Kennedy. I mean, you could not have someone further left or further right come together across the aisle and solve so many big problems. what they did together because they genuinely liked each other. And if you look at the political climate today, and if you even, if you say you like someone from the other side, you get attacked from your own party. And that's part of this culture of contempt that we are contending with right now, is to be able to do that and not get attacked by your own party for trying to reach across the aisle and be friends with someone and disagree and vehemently disagree, but say, I think we could work on this piece of legislation together.
This is fascinating. And again, for listeners, it's in week 6 of an 8-week pilot program running here in Utah. After that, it goes national, and I can't wait to see what happens at that point. But for you out there listening, you can be a part of this. You don't have to be an elected official. You don't have to be someone important at your job or anything like that. It's a pledge you can take that just reading the pledge will make you think a little bit more about this concept of dignity in how we interact with other people. And then take a second dignityindex.us as well to read the background on this. Tim Shriver, chair of Special Olympics, actually sort of brought this group of very different people together and said, we've got to figure something out here. And that was the origin of all of this. And Tami, it's a pleasure to get to talk about this each week. But final question for you here: do you have any? Do you have hopes as far as when this expands nationally? What would you like to see happen first?
Well, I'm super impatient. I'm always very impatient. It's like, let's get this done. My first year with the governor, it's like, okay, let's get this done already, and we're going to double the amount going into public education. And then you realize, like, nope, you got to be in this for the long haul. And so as we wrap up this pilot project next week, we'll have Tim Shriver and Tom Roschert, my colleagues in town in Salt Lake, and we'll spend several days going over it. But even as we talk today, we realize it's going to take us probably through the end of the year to really glean all of the lessons learned from the Utah pilot.
Sure.
And start to plan then what a national rollout would look like. And I think we have some more opportunities in Utah, honestly, to kind of take where we are and move just a little further. One of the things I would ask our listeners in Cache Valley to help me with is I've started an email address. It's dignityindex@unite.us, and I'm putting that on the website. But if you sign up, if you take the pledge, or if you just sign up, to join us and get our newsletters at the bottom of the homepage, we'll send you out a welcome email, and that email address is on there. I want people to start emailing me ideas or thoughts they've had, or what they think we could do differently, or what really worked for them, or topics that they'd like us to address in the newsletter. I mean, the holidays are coming up. I would love to do a Dear Abby column. I won't answer it, but my colleague will, and say, I'm going to have dinner with an uncle who thinks this or whatever. What's your advice? So we're going to try and get some of those ideas and maybe put them out in our newsletter. And I really want this to be crowdsourced. Isn't quite the right word, but almost. I need to hear from people who are a little bit, their curiosity is piqued by the index, or they're a lot engaged in it, so that they can help us shape where this goes next. So they can email me at dignityindex@unite.us, or just sign up on the website. Either take the pledge or scroll down to the bottom and sign up, and we'll send you an email with that email address on it as well. And let's just build this together.
That is very cool. This is, listeners, visit the site, dignityindex.us. I've linked to it on our Facebook page. Take the pledge. As Tami mentioned, you'll get that email once you take the pledge, or even if you just want to subscribe to receive their emails without taking the pledge, and then use that email to tell your story. If you've got an idea of how this could be employed or how dignity could be explored, it could be a personal story, a story from work, politics, something you saw on the news, anything like that. Help them take this and run with it on a national stage. Again, week 6 of an 8-week pilot project here in Utah. The Dignity Index can be found at dignityindex.us, dignityindex.us. I've linked to that on our Facebook page. And our guest again has been Tami Pyfer, a former Logan City Council member, school board representative, and education advisor to former Governor Gary Herbert. Tami, always a pleasure to have you here on the show, and I already can't wait
to be here.
Oh, I can't wait to check in next week already. I love where this is going.
Okay, thanks, Jason, and hello, Cache Valley.
Hello back at you, and thank you for your time as always.
Thanks.
And thanks to our listeners for their time as well. We'll be back with more of For the People right after this.
You're in the market to buy a home and dreaming of a new home you can fill with new memories. But homes just aren't in your budget. Or are they? Visionary Homes wants you to know you don't have to buy a used home. Buy new. Buy now with Visionary Homes. As a trusted award-winning Utah home builder, Visionary Homes understands that your home is the center of your life, bringing friends and family together, creating memories you'll cherish forever. Buy new. Buy now. VisionaryHomes.com.
Visionary Homes. Don't let concerns about today's events derail your long-term financial strategy. Edward Jones Financial Advisors can help work with you to understand today's financial landscape and how to be positioned for the long term. Edward Jones can give you the tools for a reasoned, disciplined approach to investing. Get started by calling one of the 7 Edward Jones locations in Cache Valley. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Have you pulled your winter quilts and blankets out of storage? Do they smell stale and look flat? And is your hunting gear, sleeping bags, and coats dingy as well? Well, go to Mount Logan Laundry. It'll take no time at all to freshen everything up with their 55 and 80-pound washers and dryers, the biggest around. And it costs a whole lot less than dry cleaning, with free Wi-Fi and drop-off service. Mount Logan Laundry really is the cleanest spot in town. They're on the corner of 5th East and 9th North in Logan, or in Brigham City at 1st East and 7th South.
Happy holidays from Birch Creek Golf Course and Off-Premise Catering. For your company or business Christmas party, I invite you to choose Birch Creek's beautiful banquet room to host your Christmas party. Our banquet room can hold 150 guests with great parking and a beautiful view of Cache Valley. So when thinking company or business Christmas party, I invite you to choose Birch Creek and Off-Premise Catering. Call Birch Creek today at 563-6825 for information. And happy holidays from your friends at Birch Creek and Off-Premise Catering.
Gene Needham is in Antwerp, Belgium today. Tell us why Antwerp is considered the diamond capital of the world.
For more than 400 years, Antwerp, Belgium has been the capital of diamond cutting. More diamonds come through Antwerp, Belgium than any other location on the globe. Diamonds are not actually mined there, but they're cut there. So mined in different countries, and then they come through Antwerp, Belgium. Of course, while I'm here, I'm actually hand-selecting diamonds to bring back to Logan. What's interesting is the secured streets and the private offices where I meet. I've got long-standing relationships with these people here in Antwerp and have done now for 20 years. It's been a long and good experience in terms of my commitment to Antwerp, Belgium. But we come here regularly in order to find the best values to bring back to Logan. To us, that's why Antwerp, Belgium is the diamond capital of the world.
Thank you for the insights, Gene. Enjoy your time in Antwerp. S.E. Needham Jewelers, middle of the block at the sign of the clock.
Thanks again to Tami Pyfer for joining us. I don't say this while we're with her because I don't want to take up her time. She's heard me say this a million times in person when we've talked. But the reason I'm so excited about this Dignity Index project is, one, the pilot program's running here in Utah. I always think that's cool. We get first look at something. But after this expands nationally, I'm going to keep close tabs on it as well. And you should, too. Take the pledge. As Tami said, through that email address you'll get once you take the pledge, respond with ideas or observations or even things you witnessed or thought about that relate to dignity or a lack thereof in how we talk to each other. Could be a story from work. Could be something you saw in the news about a politician. But Tami said she wants Cache Valley to have some direct input as they take this nationally at the end of the year. The reason I'm excited about it, and I'll be very blunt, I absolutely despise calls for civility. And the reason I do is, what does that even mean? And are you required to be civil with someone? Say you walk into a meeting at work, and there's a guy in there that's sexually harassing a woman in the meeting. Do you have to be civil with that person? What if you're down at the convenience store and a person of color comes in and someone else there at the convenience store right in front of you in line says and does something extremely racist to that person? Do you have to just stand there and smile because you don't want to be uncivil? Those are the questions I always have when playing devil's advocate, of course, when someone says, can't we all be more civil? What does that mean? And does that apply in every situation? What I love about the Dignity Index is just that. They're talking about dignity. Because in those two scenarios I pointed out where you might become borderline uncivil towards another person, you could actually call someone out on something like sexual harassment or racism or in general just being a jerk with dignity. It doesn't mean you're civil. It doesn't mean you smile and are agreeable, as most people interpret civility to mean. You could actually be very angry with a person and letting them know you feel that way in a dignified way. I love this approach. I hope it catches on, and I hope every call for civility is soon replaced with a call for more dignity in how we conduct ourselves, including those of us in the media, I think. So thanks to Tami for her time again, and please check out dignityindex.us.us. It's linked on our Facebook page as well. Tami will be back with us next week in week 7 of this pilot program, and she's bringing a guest with her, the founder of Project Unite and the Dignity Index, Tim Shriver. He is also chair of the Special Olympics. This is a real honor to get a chance to speak with him, and he'll be here in the studio with us next week. So look forward to that as well. On the other side, Utah's Insulin for All group. This is a grassroots organization trying to raise awareness and get lawmakers to pay more attention to what they call insulin deserts here in Utah. Those who need insulin to survive but lack access to it for various reasons. It's a problem that could be easily solved at the federal or state level or both, but the political will to do so obviously isn't there yet. Well, one group here in Utah wants to change that, and they're hosting a big, hopefully attention-getting rally in Salt Lake this Saturday. They're called Insulin for All, and Diana Thomas of Insulin for All joins us right after these headlines with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time is 5:36, and the news is brought to you by U&I Furniture. County voters here gave their endorsement Tuesday to both Propositions 1 and 2 on the midterm ballot. Proposition 1, the so-called open space bond issue, passed by a relatively slim margin of 2,178 votes. Proposition 2, the renewal of the Restaurant, Arts, Parks, and Zoo, the RAPS tax, also passed by a more comfortable vote margin of nearly 19,000. The open space bond was the brainchild of former North Logan Mayor Jack Draxler, entrepreneur Eric Eliason, and USU professor Steve Daniels, along with the members of an ad hoc committee who shared their vision of the need to provide a legacy of open spaces in Cache County for future generations. Proposition 1, they contend, will establish a fund to protect scenic vistas, preserve open lands near valley gateways, add trails and trail connectivity, and maintain agriculture, waterways, and wildlife habitat. Meanwhile, the renewal of the RAPS tax on Proposition 2 is a much less controversial proposal, according to Wendy Hassan, the executive director of the Cache Valley Center for the Arts. Cache County has collected a 1% sales tax on prepared food since 1992 to fund support for tourism, recreation, and the cultural arts. The RAPS tax, which is a 1/10 of 1% sales tax, was added in 2002 to support capital projects and the operating expenses of local recreational venues. Unlike the restaurant tax, the RAPS tax must be renewed every 10 years. Those combined taxes have allowed county officials and a volunteer screening committee to award more than $54 million in grants to worthy projects over the past 3 decades. Since 2002, the RAPS tax alone has generated revenues of about $26 million. Incumbent Republican U.S. Representatives Mike Simpson and Russ Fulcher retained their seats in Congress in Tuesday's election in deeply conservative Idaho. The 72-year-old Simpson won a 13th term representing the eastern portion of the state in Idaho's 2nd Congressional District. The 60-year-old Fulcher won a 3rd term representing the state's 1st Congressional District that covers the western portion. The Republican primary in the deep red state is generally considered the election that determines who will eventually hold office. Simpson easily turned aside a primary challenger, while Fulcher did not have one. And Boo Nygren has spoiled Navajo President Jonathan Nez's hopes for a 2nd term in office. Unofficial results from the tribe's election office show Nygren defeated Nez in the nonpartisan race Tuesday. Nygren had been frustrated at the pace of tribal government and infrastructure projects that he said Nez had long enough to bring to fruition. KVNU News Time is 5:39.
You'll love the holiday specials and big selection when you shop at UNI Furniture. Got guests coming? How about their best-selling mattress, a Therapeutic Serene featuring a zone coil system, comfy stretch knit top, only $399 for the queen size. For Christmas, a TV? How about 50 different console choices from small to large with or without fireplaces? And over 200 chairs on display, including the best in recliners. They offer free layaway and prices you'll love. A local standard when it comes to furniture. There's always a better buy at UNI Furniture, UNI Downtown Logan.
KVNU weather for tonight, mostly cloudy with snow likely this evening, then a chance of snow after midnight. Accumulation around 1 inch. Overnight low in the low 20s, partly sunny into the lower 30s on Thursday. Our high today has been 43. Right now it's 31 at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology. Turn life up. Schedule a free hearing evaluation with Dr. Paul Dames at Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology. Go to cachehearing.com. For more details on these and other stories, visit cachevalleydaily.com.
This is Jace Allen with Allen Mortuaries. From our family to yours, thank you for voting Allen Mortuaries Best Funeral Home of Northern Utah and Best Funeral Home of Cache Valley. We sincerely appreciate the confidence and trust your family has given us over the past 83 years. When you trust us with the final preparations of your loved one, you get the kind of caring, personalized service you can only expect from a family-owned funeral home. It's our family serving yours. Voted Best Funeral Home of Cache Valley in Northern Utah, Allen Mortuaries. Then, now, always.
Ready to experience a new level of local transit? Well, with the new CVTD app, it's super simple for you to plan your trip to a T. With our interactive map, you can view bus stops closest to your location with real-time arrival information. You can mark your favorite stops, get alerts, set reminders, and much more. So whether you're a seasoned pro or it's your first ride, get moving today with the new CVTD app.
Hi, it's Chris at Levin's. People ask us all year long, when is your big sale? It's the 11th day of the 11th month, 11/11 at Levin's. Come in for men's suits only $160 and up. Pattern ties 5 for $25, solid ties 5 for $15, socks $2.50, dress pants $22. All women's and men's clothing on sale. Every item in the store up to 50% off. This week only, Levin's, downtown 69 North Main Street.
For less at Levin's, where men and women look their best.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. I'm Jason Williams. Bill Walter here in the studio as well. Talk more about Cache Valley election results before the end of the hour here, especially what it means that the Open Space Bond Initiative passed. This is, wow, if you say that a certain way, it sounds more astronaut-y than it is. Open Space Bond Initiative. We'll talk more about that because that I think is one of the most interesting results of the election as far as Cache Valley's future goes. That's coming up before the end of the show here. Right now, a very special guest joining us, and she is representing an organization that I think has done some of the most amazing things that ever happened here in Utah, which is bring attention to an issue that lawmakers previously really weren't plugged into, but they've managed to get them paying attention, including then a state senator, now as Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson, who has also championed this cause. The group is Utah Insulin for All, and as the name implies, that's what they're about, making insulin something that a person who needs it to survive doesn't have to go without. We've seen news stories, tragic story from just a couple of years ago of a young man rationing his insulin because he couldn't afford it, and he died at a very young age. people would be shocked to find out how many people out there in our own communities, our own neighborhoods, our own workplaces, our own family are doing this because of costs or lack of access. So Utah Insulin for All wants to change that, and their message is it is changeable. They're doing that in part by holding a big rally this Saturday to get people engaged and to raise awareness. Joining us right now from Utah Insulin for All, our good friend Diana Thomas. And Diana, appreciate taking some time for KVNU today. Maybe you can start us off with the details on the rally. How can people attend?
Thanks for having us and helping us get this information out.
Our pleasure.
We will be hosting a rally at the state capitol at 1 o'clock on Saturday. We really are trying to put pressure on the pharmacy board to include insulin as one of the drugs that pharmacists can prescribe, because there are so many barriers that, as a more rural state, a lot of people who require insulin run into a lot of issues trying to access that. We want to get that barrier gone if we can at all. And many voices will make a difference. And so we're encouraging people to come, join us, lend your voices, bring a sign. We'll have signs. Just come, help us. Let them know how important this issue is to our entire community, not just a few of us that keep trying to talk to them. They need to know that there's a lot of need, and continuing to ignore that is going to cost lives. And like you mentioned in the introduction, it is a regular occurrence for us to find out that another diabetic died because of rationing, because they couldn't access their insulin, either because of cost or just general barriers. And this one addresses how hard it can be to get your prescription renewed when we're in a rural area, especially, here in Logan. It's harder, and we need change.
Sure. This is, it's one of those things that it just shouldn't happen. When you look into the manufacturing costs of insulin, when you look into the wide distribution of insulin, it's easily available, but it's not cheap. And so a person without insurance, a person with insurance but unable to pay for their deductible, whatever it might be, oftentimes they decide not to take it. And unfortunately, as Diana's mentioned, as you've seen in news stories, that doesn't go well. It's very bad for your health at best, fatal at worst, and commonly. And Diana, there are a lot of, I've run into this as we've talked about Insulin for All here on the show, as we've, just explored the topic in general. There's a lot of misunderstanding about diabetes in general. There's a lot of folks who will say, well, can't you control that with diet and things like that? And yeah, in some cases, yes, in some cases not. But never is that the case for a type 1 diabetic. It's estimated that anywhere between 65 and 70,000 people are diagnosed with type 1 diabetes each and every year. A person close to me, for example, a loved one, a family member, is a type 1 diabetic because her pancreas stopped working. That's it. Overnight, she became dependent on insulin. So now imagine someone in your family putting their life at risk because they couldn't afford something. You wouldn't let that happen, and yet we let it happen every single day with insulin. Diana, this blew me away. From the Insulin for All website, the T1international.com, for those who want to check it out, but also find them at Utah Insulin for All on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and more. 1 in every 4. So 65 to 70,000 people diagnosed as type 1 diabetics each and every year, and 1 in 4 of them has rationed insulin. That blows me away.
Sadly, it's very, very true. And, part of what we're trying to help those people with is taking away another barrier. So just to kind of put this into perspective, when my daughter was diagnosed, we would have to go all the way down to Salt Lake City from Logan, so about 80 miles each way. I would have to take an entire day off of work, so we've got lost wages there. Then if my insurance didn't cover it, it would be a $700 office visit with my endocrinologist. Then they always require lab tests, which I looked through my things, and before insurance, it was $170. And then I can have my insulin prescription. My doctor it tends to be a little more flexible, but a lot of people find doctors holding their prescription hostage. If you won't come in at the time that they demand, they won't renew your insulin prescription.
Wow.
Now, so based on that's $900 out of pocket just to get your insulin prescription for somebody like me who lives in a more rural area, and then and then lost wages on top of that.
Sure.
What we're asking the pharmacy board to do is to allow pharmacists to prescribe insulin. There's a low risk of abuse. There is a high risk of somebody, their life is on the line. It's time sensitive. If they can't get that refill in a reasonable amount of time,
sure,
like you mentioned, they will die. This is not something that you can put off. And we can do better than that. We supposedly, and I agree, that we have some of the best trained pharmacists in the world. If I were to go to many other countries, insulin is either available over the counter or is prescribed by your pharmacist. Why can't we do that in the U.S.? If we have that much training into our pharmacists, why can't they help us with that? Especially when you can already get naloxone, birth control, smoking cessation drugs, HIV exposure drugs, antibiotics for strep and a UTI. Why can't I get insulin? Isn't that at least as important for patients to have access to? And frequently, I have to make my appointment for my daughter at least 6 months out. I don't know about you, but sometimes life changes in those 6 months. What if I can't make that appointment? I may be out of luck for a while to try and get another appointment.
Sure.
To get my prescription refilled. Why are we asking people who are already struggling financially to pay an extra $900 plus lost wages just to get access to their insulin? And if they're lucky, they can afford their insulin.
Sure.
And there are people in other parts of Utah that are even farther from an endocrinologist.
Oh.
And they have to make even a bigger sacrifice to access their doctors who will hold that prescription hostage.
That's and also keep in mind what Diana is describing here is something 30 million Americans roughly are dealing with this on a daily basis. And you've all probably heard the stories at this point. Discovered in 1923, insulin extremely cheap to make, but the profit margins have doubled every decade since then until in 2010, the average price in 2010, according to Kaiser's own data, was around $450 a vial that costs $10 to make. The pressure on drug companies and benefit managers has been, growing at a federal level. Diana, here with Utah Insulin for All, you're hoping to get state lawmakers engaged in paying attention. How much can they do at the state level?
So, beginning January 1st of 2022, there was the Pharmacy Practice Modifications Bill, it was House Bill 178, that was went into effect actually on January 1st, that the original intent of this bill was to get insulin prescribed by pharmacists. Unfortunately, they've added all those other things that we talked about. Wonderful things. I'm glad they have people can access that through their pharmacist. But the original intent was to have insulin on that list, knowing lives are on the line for that. And we've been trying to talk to the pharmacy board. We're trying to get their attention. We're getting a lot of pushback and a lot of, the 60-day emergency law we passed with House Bill 207 a couple years prior. They say that's sufficient.
Sure.
That doesn't address how do I get to my doctor's office if they won't, I still can't get in that 60 days. And unfortunately, that's a pretty common problem.
Yeah.
Trying to get into that doctor within that time. And sometimes, there's maybe a little bit of poor planning goes into it, but a lot of it is I can't afford to take an entire day off of work to get into that appointment because our appointments last a minimum of 2 hours.
Sure.
And if we've got, all that travel time to get access to our doctors, how do you do that? How do you add that as an additional financial burden that does not need to be there?
And again, all of these hurdles and barriers for something that is extremely cheap to make, huge profit margins, unjustifiable profit margins at this point, and is necessary for millions and millions of Americans to survive. Just every aspect of this just blows me away, Diana. I'm so happy. Utah Insulin for All, it deserves a lot of credit here because you've got lawmakers paying attention. You've got them at least aware of the issue, whereas 2 or 3 years ago they weren't. And hats off to you for that. But for listeners out there, they need your support. You can be there with them at the rally, 1 p.m. at the state capitol this Saturday. If you can't do that, you can also join them online. Utah Insulin for All is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as UT Insulin for All. That's the number 4, Insulin for All, UT Insulin for All. You can also visit the T1 International website for the Utah chapter, which is T1 for type 1, t1international.com/UT. Also connect with their social media there. Sign up for their email newsletter, buy a T-shirt to support them and raise awareness. And most of all, talk to your lawmakers about this. Write an email. It is something that really has a simple solution, but we need to do it. Our guest has been Diana Thomas of the Utah Insulin for All chapter. And Diana, always a pleasure to have you here on the show. The rally again this Saturday at 1 p.m. I hope you draw a huge crowd, and I hope we get a chance to talk again soon.
I will look forward to visiting with you again. And yes, please come lend your support however that you can, because together we can make change, but we need help.
Absolutely. Get in touch with them via email as well, utinsulinforall@t1international.com. Find them on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, UT Insulin for All on all 3, and visit the website, t1international.com/UT for the Utah chapter site. Diana Thomas again with Utah Insulin for All, our guest. And Diana, thank you. To our listeners, thank you. We'll be back right after this.
This is Ryan at My Mattress. We've teamed up with Ridgeline High School Booster Club to bring you the Mattress Warehouse Sale of the year. November 11th and 12th at Ridgeline High School. My Mattress, Maloof, and Serenoni will have truckloads of mattresses, mattress protectors, sheets, pillows, accessories, Serenoni blankets, and more at blowout, rock-bottom prices. Don't miss this chance for blowout pricing from My Mattress, Maloof, and Serenoni. November 11th and 12th at the Ridgeline High School Mattress Warehouse Sale.
The Cache Valley Media Group Logan Holiday Gift Show is presented by Coppins Hallmark. This Friday and Saturday at the Riverwoods Conference Center, plan on kicking off your holiday shopping with unique and fun ideas for the entire family. Clothing, books, jewelry, purses, home and holiday decor, baby items, and don't miss everyone's favorite guest, Santa. The Logan Holiday Gift Show, presented by Coppins Hallmark, is this Friday and Saturday at the Riverwoods Conference Center. Start your holiday shopping off right.
Thursday edition, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. We're still waiting to see what happened in Nevada, Arizona, many other House seats as well. Who's going to control the House? Who's going to control the Senate? We will break down all of the latest with you there. Plus, fun.
How's the country doing these days? Because Biden's awful at being president, so what's the latest on crime, immigration, the border, economy? That stuff all matters to us. We'll break it down for you on Clay and Buck.
10 to 1 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM and 610 AM.
Thanks again to Diana Thomas of Utah Insulin for All. I can't stress this enough, how big of a deal this is and how ridiculous that it's an issue in the first place. That is, insulin is cheap to make, widely available, and yet because of costs and other barriers like this requirement, to see a doctor for a prescription rather than a pharmacist, a lot of Utahns are rationing it, and they die. And this should not continue. So please support Utah Insulin for All. Be at their rally at 1 p.m. this Saturday at the Capitol. If you can't do that, join them on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, UT Insulin for All with a number 4, or visit t1international.com/UT for their website and to subscribe to their newsletter. And the biggest thing you can do, spread the word. Email your lawmakers. Talk to everyone about this. It should not be happening. Dave Ramsey next.